I wish to move and speak to the amendment. Cathaoirleach, is that in order now? Yep. Okay. So, Cathaoirleach, firstly, I want to thank my colleague, Senator Buttimer, for seconding this amendment. It's very helpful and allows us to get our debate underway quickly, and I want to acknowledge and thank you for that. I want to welcome also the Minister here, and I don't really want Minister to rehash too much here today. I think, and to be fair, we had a good debate. I want to acknowledge your staff that are here too, and this is a very specialised area, and I've looked and read all about the reports in relation to the Marine Casualty Bill, but also issues around marine casualty and the importance of being an island nation and our interface with the sea. And there's been an awful lot of public commentary about this, and I also want to acknowledge the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Transport, who dealt with very extensively this particular issue. So, Minister, you will be aware that this motion, I'm not going to read the motion to the House, it's there on the record, and it seeks basically within 9 months of the passing of this Act that you would bring a report on the feasibility to provide for the establishment of a regulator for the Marine Casualty Investigation Board, and that the regulator will be deemed agreeable if this is deemed agreeable with the Minister, and so on, it goes on. So I'm conscious that, look, it's ultimately your decision, you're responsible, you're driving this issue, and I want to acknowledge that of Minister Hildegard Naughton as well, and her work in this area, and for her meaningful engagement at the committee stage in relation to this debate. So what am I saying, Minister? I'm saying that we had the Lacey report and the Clinch report, and you'll be very familiar with them. And the Lacey report, this report was undertaken by Roisin Lacey, Senior Counsel. It was delivered on the 25th of August 2010 to the Department of Transport. It still is unpublished. The report was commissioned by the then Minister of Transport, Noel Dempsey, and I know that's a long time ago, and the Lacey report made some very substantial recommendations. And we know one of those key recommendations was that there be an independent in every way. The Department of Transport, they talked about an investigation office, and it talked about the independence in every way from the Department of Transport, encompassing aviation, rail and the marine, identifying that it had to be done to comply with the EU directives. Now, I know, and was compatible with international and Irish law. Now, we have moved on from that. I know they explored all of that, and that was more a case study about having a sort of a response for aviation, rail and marine. I detect from looking at the debates that there's a desire within the department to focus just on the marine aspect. So what's interesting looking back on the press clippings and some research from the Library and Research Unit downstairs, that there has been many calls for the Garda Commissioner to act on the Lacey report. I thought that was interesting. I'm not going down the road of who said what. I don't think it's appropriate to do so here today. There also have been accusations that internally within the Department of Transport there's huge resistance to have the Lacey report published and its recommendations. Again, that's an accusation. I'm not making that, but there is that suggestion that there's huge resistance for some reason, and I'm not privy. I'm privy to aspects of the reports, and some of that I cannot absolutely be sure is correct, so therefore I'm not going to quote that extensively. But I am going to now turn to the Clinch report, of which you'll be very, very familiar with, and I've read a number of transcripts into the record at the last meeting of which you commented in relation to the Clinch report. And what we do know about the Clinch report, that was conducted by Captain Steve Clinch, the UK-based Clinch Marine Limited, again commissioned by the Department of Transport, your department, to carry out an independent review of the organisational structures of the Maritime Casualty Investigations Board, known as MCIB. Minister, you will be aware that the Clinch report was delivered to your department back in 2021 and is still not being published. I don't know if you've considered all of its recommendations. I do not know if you intend implementing any of those recommendations. I simply don't know. I think it's important to state again that the Clinch report was a government-funded report. And it carried out this independent review of Ireland's maritime casualty investigation structures. Its aim was to address the current organisational structures, and I think that's the kernel of all this debate and these issues. It's how can we address the current problems, deficits in the organisational structures of the Maritime Casualties Investigation Board, and I think that's where the suggested shortcomings are and where the concerns in relation to this matter are. Clinch set out the recommendations and suggested that these could be embodied into law. He says ensuring that Ireland is fully compliant with its EU and international obligations. You will be aware of the Clinch report, as I say, Minister, so you'll know the finer, granular detail of these recommendations. Clinch also advocated for a robust and properly resourced marine casualty in the capacity for any new organisational structure. So again, we're talking about the organisational structure, we're talking about the professionalism, we're talking about the accountability in relation to issues around marine casualty. Minister, can you tell me what you intend to put in place, and when you intend to put in place the details are fully published, the details of the Clinch report? How many recommendations are there? As I said, have you considered them in detail? Are you still working on that? Is it your intention to bring all those recommendations in, and what's the timeline involved in that? I understand that the key recommendations from the Clinch report is to establish a full-time professional unit for investigation of marine casualties. That sounds reasonable and obvious. I'm told that the current structures in Ireland is a part-time investigation board. I can't be sure of that. That's what I'm told. I'm told that it's a part-time investigation board staffed by part-time investigators. Again, I'm told that. I'm simply putting it to you, is that the case? Can you confirm today? Is this a part-time operation or a full-time operation? Are they part-time investigators? And maybe there isn't the demand. You will know this from the data in your possession in the department. Is there a real demand for a full-time set of investigators or a panel of investigators? I simply am posing those questions to you today, Minister. At the Select Committee, and I said I'd looked extensively at the reports and data and information that was attributed to you. So at the Select Committee of the Transport Communications on Wednesday, the 16th of February 2022, you said, and I quote, "As the Clinch report was commissioned on the back of the Department's initiative, it is very much in our interest that it would be published and acted upon. I am happy to commit here to doing exactly that." End of quote. During previous debates, on the record of the Houses, Deputies Joe Kerry, Darren O'Rourke and Cathal Crowe had indicated similar concerns to the ones that I'm articulating here today, and the record speaks for that in itself. There is clearly a need, and they said this too, there is clearly a need for new structures and new systems to deal with maritime casualties and related matters, including a full-time independent investigation unit. Again, going back to this particular meeting on the 16th of February 2022, you say, and I quote, "What I said in private session is that we expect the publication of the Clinch report at the end of Q1, and that is still the timeline, subject to the Office of Attorney General and others signing off on it." No, I understand the role of the Office of Attorney General, and I respect that. And I know that clearly is your intention. I hope it's clearly your intention. I do not know where we are in relation to the Office of the Attorney General in relation to considering all these matters. I know it's a big work schedule. This mightn't be a particular at the top of his priority list. But have you any indication, or can you share with us today any indication of where we are in relation to the Attorney General considering these matters? And are we any nearer a deadline or a date when we can see the publication? Minister, I have no skin in this game. I've never been involved in an accident in maritime. None of my family have been. I've no knowledge of it, other than what people have come and contacted my office. I've had people from Donegal. I've had people from Galway. I've had people from Kinsale. I've had people from Arklow who've been on to me and shared horrific stories of their experience. They are concerned. They believe there are shortcomings here and that we need to address them. And I think from what I have read and my understanding of your commentary in relation to these matters at the committee, particularly in the Dáil, is that you too have concerns. To what extent they are, I don't know. As I say, a lot of work may be going on in the background. So my ask really today, Minister, is that we would have, my simple ask to you today is that we would have access to current organisational, that you would assess the current organisational structures for marine casualty investigation and set out a report at some stage in the future with recommendations and timelines to achieve the most appropriate and the most effective marine casualty investigation structures for Ireland. That's not an unreasonable request. And just to say that I'm conscious they must also be compatible, and you know this and we all know that, would take into account the national and European legislation in this regard. Back finally to my amendment. My amendment seeks that the Minister shall, within the 9 months, consider this issue around a regulator and I think it's important that the new regulator would take into consideration recommendations of the Lacey report. We take into consideration, it's all very reasonable, recommendations and the Clinch report and the ruling of the European Court of Human Rights. And we know about that case, and that case was very, very significant, and I don't want to go into that in too much detail, but we know that came at a cost financially and a cost to the individual who took the case to Europe. So I think, Minister, I know you're on top of your brief, you know the issues here, you know the granular detail of the concerns, and my really concern today, as I said, I have no skin in this game, I have no personal axe to grind with anyone. All I want to see is a robust and a professional operation that ensures that we have a marine casualty investigation organisation resourced with the structures, appropriate structures in place to address these issues within Ireland. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.